Hi, my name is Kirsten Kimura. Welcome to the Balanced Vibes podcast. If you're ready to quit the black and white approach to health and fitness, this is the podcast for you. There's no room for extremes and all or nothing thinking. We are here to talk about real health, sustainable diet and fitness, positive psychology, and spiritual growth, helping you become your own biggest superfan. Welcome to the show. Before we get started, remember that I am not a doctor, and the content in this material is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding your health. Hey everybody, this is episode number 12 of the Balanced Vibes podcast, and I am your host Kirsten. Thanks so much for being here. Today we are talking about intentional eating. I believe that most of us have been on some sort of strict diet where we followed certain rules, whether these rules were from somebody else or if we came up with these rules and we ate a certain way and we're really, really strict with it, and we maybe achieved some goals that we wanted to achieve, but a lot of times they came with a price. For example, messing up our health. Maybe after that, maybe you realize that, okay, yes, this didn't really work for me. I got sick, I got tired, it was too strict for me. And then you maybe found out that, oh, I can actually also listen to my body and eat whatever I want, whenever I want, however much I want. And maybe this idea started like being really exciting for you and you wanted to try it out. So these are kind of like the two ends of the dieting spectrum. One end, there's this really strict diet, and the other end is like eat whatever you want, whenever you want, no rules, no anything diet. And, it's a cool idea that, you can eat whatever you want, whenever you want, but a lot of times it's not very helpful for somebody who has no experience with it. So when somebody just tells you, oh, just listen to your body, and that way you can figure out what you want to eat or what you should be eating. Yeah, the idea of it is kind of cool, although sometimes it can be scary, but the whole idea, it's actually really cool. You're like, oh, wow, I don't even have to think about food, or I don't even have to think about calories or anything like that. That would be so awesome. But then when you start trying it, it's actually not that easy. And this is what I want to talk about today, because to me, intentional eating can be actually the solution that is not the strict dieting, but it's also not random advice like, oh, just listen to your body. Now, of course, if there's somebody listening who has never had any issues with food or any restrictions or any eating disorder or disordered eating behaviors, for them, of course, it is just listen to your body. And it's very, very simple. And I think I mentioned in an earlier episode, I don't remember which one it was, but I mentioned that I once asked my husband, Hugh, when I was creating the eating part for my group coaching program, that why don't you tell me, how do you know what you want to eat and how much of it do you want to eat and when to stop? And I asked him because he has never had any eating disorders. He has lost weight intentionally. Yes, he has been on a diet, but he did never get obsessed with it. By the way, this is another thing to keep in mind. Not everybody who goes on a short-term diet for whatever reason becomes obsessed with it. So he's absolutely a great example of that. But anyways, I asked him, okay, so how would you describe it? Like, how do you know what to eat, how much to eat, when to stop, and all that kind of stuff? And his response was, well, I usually, when I eat like some meat and some grains and some vegetables, I usually want to eat that. And then I want to eat it, and then I start eating it, and then I stop when I'm full. And I'm like, okay, that's really cool. And I think that this is how most of us actually felt until to the point where we got really, really engaged with food, or got really, really excited and like wanted to change food and wanted to change our diet and got a little too obsessed with it. But when you think about it, when we were little, I think everybody had this built-in knowledge that we just knew when to stop. However, later stuff started happening and we pretty much ruined this connection with ourselves. And now it's very, very hard to find it. And if somebody just tells you that, oh, just listen to your body, then that can be a very unhelpful advice. And we could use some guidance in order to understand better what that means and how to actually start eating sustainably. Now, here are 3 reasons why telling somebody that just listen to your body and stop when you're full isn't helpful. The first reason is that maybe this person you're talking to has never experienced this type of thing. For many people, disordered eating started very early on. So the last time they actually ate intuitively maybe was in their childhood. We've all seen, I don't know if we've all seen, but we know that babies, for example, when they eat or they drink their milk or whatever, even a little bit later, they eat, and then at one point they just close their mouth and they don't want to eat anymore. And this is the intuition, right? We do have it, but we have lost it. So maybe the last time you had this experience was when you were little, maybe you were a child or a teenager, and then you started doing the crazy dieting stuff, and then it all, you lost that connection. The second reason why just listen to your body isn't helpful is that many of us have always followed a plan, and without any structure or any guidelines other than listen to your body, we really don't even know where to start because we have always followed a rule. And the last reason why just listen to your body is not very helpful is that a lot of us have so many fears around food. And because we have followed so many rules, we also have lists of good foods and bad foods, in air quotes. And we also think that if we break a rule, we are a bad person because of it. So these are the reasons why just telling somebody, oh, listen to your body, your body will guide you, you know when to stop, it's not very, very helpful. Next, let's talk about the diet spectrum, which I briefly also mentioned before. You know that I like my spectrums. I've been talking about the overtraining recovery spectrum for a long time, or burnout recovery spectrum rather. And there are 3 phases on this spectrum. The first one is the burnout, where you're overtraining, undereating, totally depleting your body. The second phase is where you're like, oh crap, I have to do something about it because I can't keep going on like that. And this is the healing phase. And once you get through the healing phase, you are arriving at the last phase, which is the balance phase, which is the place where we all want to be eventually, because this is where we're actually and truly healthy. So this is the burnout recovery spectrum, and I've talked about that everywhere a lot. Today, let's talk about the diet spectrum. And like I mentioned earlier, there are 2 ends of the spectrum, 2 extremes. And the one side of this spectrum, the first side is the strict plan eating, let's call it this way. And then the opposite side, there is the no structure eating. This is the like eat anything, whatever you want, whenever you want, however much you want, and that type of thing. So these are the 2 extremes. But what is in between is the intentional eating, what I'm going to talk about more today. And I believe that the truth is always somewhere in between. It does not have to be either or. I've noticed that a lot on social media, everywhere, that people want you to pick a side. They're like, okay, are you saying this or are you saying that? And I'm like, well, maybe I'm saying a little bit of both, or I'm not saying either, because the actual truth is in between. So I do not believe in sustainability of super strict and rule-based diet where you have to follow every single rule to a T. But I also don't think that a diet that has absolutely no structure can be the best option for everybody. I do think that intentional eating can fill this gap really nicely, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But first, let's take a look at that strict, very rule-based diet that many of us are really, really familiar with. So this is the first end of the spectrum. And this is what describes this way of eating when you are following a very strict rule-based diet. It usually comes with a certain prescribed number of calories that you should be eating. I'm also saying, again, air quotes, should be eating. Then it also comes often with prescribed number of each macronutrients. It can also be a number of points if you're doing Weight Watchers. There are often lists of good and bad and right and wrong foods. And there are also specific eating times. For example, you've been told, okay, you got to eat at 8, at 11, at 2, at whatever, etc. Right? So this is the very strict and very rule-based diet. And if you are a type A person, you're not able to understand that, okay, I can, my calories were like 2,200 than my nutritionist or somebody wanting me to eat, but you don't understand that you can actually play around with it a little bit. You have some flexibility, and you think that this has to be so strict and so rigid that now if you break a rule, you're a bad person and you screwed everything. So this is the really strict and rule-based diet and the mindset that goes with it. And then on the opposite end, we have the no structure diet, right? There's no structure at all. When I say, diet here, I mean the way of eating, right? There's no rules, because that's what the name says. No structure, no rules diet. And here's what describes this way of eating. There's no specific calorie numbers, even no estimates or any rough guidelines to follow. The same with macros, no estimates or even like rough guidelines to follow. Just eat whatever you want. Don't think about your macros at all. It will always be fine. This is kind of the message that goes with it. There are no good or bad lists of foods. But also often there's no attention to, what foods are nutritionally higher quality, what foods are nutritionally lower quality. So there's no understanding really what could be better for your health and what could be worse for your health. And also there's no specific eating times, and you can eat whenever you want, whenever feels good for you, and however you want to eat. So both of these ways of eating, in my opinion, have their upsides and downsides, and I want to look at them next. Okay, so let's first talk about the upsides of the strict and rule-based diet. And I know many of you may be thinking there's absolutely no upsides to that, but I think if we look, we can actually see a couple of things. So first of all, they can help you achieve your physique goal if you have it. Yes, I know you may be thinking, oh, but physique goals are bad or wrong. No, I don't think they're bad or wrong. I think they can be bad or wrong if we are super strict about them, if we put the physique goal before our health, if we sacrifice our mental and physical and social and all kinds of different ways of our health just so that we can achieve that physique goal. Yes, this is a bad thing. I'm not a fan of that at all. But if we are looking just upsides of the strict diet, we can say that yes, they will help you achieve your goal. Okay, the second upside is that they help you manage your health conditions. If you have something going on, you have diabetes or something, you got to be pretty strict with it, right? You got to be pretty strict with what you eat in order to keep your condition under control. I don't think anyone can deny that. And the last upside is more like psychological. They give us the sensation of being on track. I know a lot of people like this way of feeling. They're like, yes, I did it. I checked off the box. I stuck with my calories or macros or something like that. So again, we can argue whether it's a good or bad thing, like where it can lead, but I'm talking just like psychologically right now. A lot of people like that feeling, okay? But there, of course, are many downsides of this very strict and rule-based diet as well, which is that, first of all, they can create restrictive eating behaviors and potentially causing food obsessions. Yes, that's super important to know. However, like I said earlier, not everybody goes down that path. So we cannot say that everybody who has been on diet definitely ends up with a food obsession or an eating disorder. My husband's a good example. He has tried a few things in his life, never had an eating disorder. And there's plenty of examples of that. It's a certain type of person who gets obsessed, and it's usually the very type A person. Okay. Then another downside of the strict and rule-based diet is that if the plan that you're following is too strict or it's not right for you, it can lead to eating too low calories or not getting enough macro and micronutrients, and you're going to run into some serious health issues, as we all know. Hypothalamic amenorrhea, overtraining syndrome, just plain under-eating problems that slow down metabolism. By the way, if you want to learn a little bit more about metabolism and how to speed it up, please check out the show notes. There is a free resource for you about that. It's a 7-day email course. You want to check it out if you think that your metabolism has slowed down. And also another downside of the strict rule-based diet is time consuming. It's time consuming to put in your calories, to calculate your macros. It can definitely take a lot of time. I had one client who told me that when she stopped doing it, she on average she's saved about 40 minutes every day. So that's pretty awesome. Okay, now let's look at the other side of things, the upside and downsides of the other diet, which is the no rules, no structure diet. So the upsides of it is a very relaxed mindset because the food is not causing you any fear or any obsession. And this is what so many women appreciate when they stop being so afraid of food. They see that, oh, I can eat this, I can go out, I can be normal, around food and hang out with people. I'm not afraid. I'm not obsessed anymore. And this is huge. This gives you so much freedom. The second thing that is an upside of this no structured diet is that it can actually help you understand your body's needs because no foods are off limits. So maybe you thought that because you were always following a plan and now you start trying new things, you're like, oh, I actually really like this and my body feels better when I eat this, as opposed to restricting everything and feeling like crap all the time. And another upside of the no structured diet is less chance of creating eating disorders or disordered eating. And that's really, really important. Now let's talk about the downsides of the no structured diet. And some people may say there's no downsides, if you feel so great all the time, you didn't do whatever you want. I do think that there can be some downsides. For example, it's really hard to reach any goal, whether they're health goals, whether they're physique goals, performance goals. If you have no structure, if you have no guidelines with your diet, how are you going to change that if nothing changes, right? So if you keep eating, you have no idea, like you don't keep track of anything, you just don't know how to get better. And let's say that you do have a performance goal, you want to get stronger, you have to eat a specific way, you have to add something. Most of the times it's about adding something in order to get better, in order to get stronger. So without having any structure, it's really hard to reach any goals, which is the first downside of the no structure diet. Another one is that it may be harder to eat the right amount. Overeating and undereating can be common if we have no idea what we're doing. And a lot of times what we see is that people are undereating severely. Actually, it comes to mind my coworker, the chiropractic office where I'm working. She said that she realized that she's eating 1,100 calories a day. And to me, that's mind blowing because I don't know how can anyone ever survive on that low amount of calories. I've usually reached that amount by noon. But for example, yeah, that's true. So if there's no structure, there's no guidelines, no knowledge, then we can easily undereat. And of course, we can also overeat. There are a lot of people who do have this problem. They do overeat. They do have weight problems because of it. So that's because we have no knowledge, no structure. The next thing is that it may be harder to get all the important nutrients to feel great. Again, if we don't track, we don't know anything, we may be feeling really low energy all the time, but I don't know why. Well, maybe looking at your food might help to figure out if there's anything missing. And another one is that this is also like psychological. You may feel like all over the place with food and eating. Now, this is how I felt a little bit, about a year or so after I had recovered from HA, that I felt like I'm like, eating literally whatever all the time. And I started missing a little bit more structure, a little bit more like regularity. Not that one day I'm like, I'm so freaking hungry and I'm eating tons and tons and tons. And next day I'm like, I don't want to eat anything because the body, regulates itself and doesn't want that much anymore. So I had a lot of these types of days. And then I would just like randomly eat sweets and stuff at night when I actually didn't need it. It was just like really, really lax and like super all over the place. And after a little while, I did not like it anymore. I liked it for a while, but later I started missing some structure back. And I don't know that this is necessarily a bad thing. I think it's just depends on the person. Okay. So now intentional eating can be something that allows you to combine both worlds and get the best from the both worlds. Intentional eating is the gray area between these two. And at the end of the day, the goal is to feel good and have enough energy so we can live our lives the fullest, right? So that's why it may be helpful to be a little bit more intentional with our food. So if you have certain goals, for example, building more muscle, keeping chronic illness at bay, or recover from hypothermic amenorrhea, then intentional eating is the best way to achieve them. And next we're talking about the intentional eating and what it can do for you. And finally, how you can get started with it. Okay, so here are the things that intentional eating can help you do. The first thing is to achieve your goals, like I mentioned before. Here's an example. If you want to build muscle and look leaner, you will have to eat a certain way to achieve that. Of course, you have to exercise a certain way too to achieve that, but the diet is still the number one thing that helps you achieve that. On the other hand, you may also have a completely opposite goal, which is to recover from burnout. That includes recovering from overtraining and from undereating. And you may actually have to gain weight to get better. We have to be intentional with our eating regardless of our goal, right? Whether you want to get leaner or burn fat, or whether you have to gain weight in order to recover from overtraining, we have to be intentional with the way we eat, right? So for example, in the first case, you really want to emphasize your protein intake. To build muscle, you need muscle building material, and that's what protein is. Protein and to some extent carbs will help you do that. Your body won't start putting on muscle magically if you keep eating the same way you did before. You just had this new idea that you now want to gain muscle. And in the second case, where we talked about the HA recovery, overtraining recovery, you want to increase overall calories. And some women have asked me if they can just eat intuitively to recover from burnout. And, some people can. I pretty much did it. But a lot of times, women have been undereating for such a long time that their bodies just don't want much more food. And if they continue to eat just intuitively, they will continue to eat 1,200 calories because this is all their body asks for. So We have to be intentional. So this is the first thing that intentional eating can do for you, help you achieve your goals. The second thing I want to mention here is regulating your blood sugar. Blood sugar regulation is super important. And if you doubt it, I don't blame you, because I didn't think that it's so as important either. For the longest time, I was like, yeah, everybody talks about it, but I don't feel anything. I can eat like all sorts of sweets, especially during and after my HA recovery, and not feel terrible. I know some people say they get like terrible energy dips and then they need more and then they get energy dips. I didn't feel that way, but I learned later that my blood sugar actually was swinging quite a bit. It wasn't until I started tracking my blood sugar and realized that mine actually does swing up and down quite a bit. So I've shared this before, but I am so passionate about it that I have to say it again, that after learning about foods that really spiked my blood sugar up super high, and then I significantly reduced them or even eliminated some of them, my period pains completely went away. I learned this from Nicole Jarnum's program, Fix Your Period. I'm going to put the link in the show notes so you can look it up, and it really, really worked for me. Look, my goal is not to scare you. I'm not saying that sugar is the evil and devil of like everything, but I am saying that sugar can really affect your hormones, and this was the case for me. It may not be like this for everyone, and I don't encourage you to become super obsessive with avoiding sugar. I am not saying that at all. I am eating sugar every day, so don't get that wrong. But it is worth it to take a look at your sugar consumption if you have some hormonal issues. And like I said, I'm eating something sweet most days, but I generally don't eat regular sugar. I do eat like the Lily's chocolate, which is stevia sweetened. I have a little bit of that. I have some protein bars here and there. I know it's not like the healthiest food in the world, but if you want some little bit of sweetness, then I generally do not eat regular sugar. I'm saying generally, maybe I have it, here and there sometimes, because I know that eating something like that is not gonna wreck my health. This is another like black or white thinking. This is not true, but just in general. So I want this to be really, really clear, because I had many cases where people have like started attacking me, like, oh, you are talking out of this dieting mindset perspective again, and this is not true. We have to understand that there's a difference between our health and then the dieting mindset. I don't think that everyone should use a glucometer to track their blood sugar, but if you have period issues such as super painful periods like I had, or irregular, then tracking may help you to figure out if the blood sugar has something to do with it. And again, I learned it from Nicole Jardine's program, Fix Your Period. I use the track 2. She has track 1 and track 2. You can see which one would be better fit for you. And also, by the way, balanced blood sugar can also help you sleep better. If you're somebody who's waking up a lot at night, or even night sweats can be associated with blood sugar irregularities. So this is another reason why you want to keep your blood sugar in check. So now it's obvious how intentional eating can help you if you want to keep your blood sugar in check. If you are intentional about your eating, your blood sugar will be more stable. You eat more protein, you eat more fat. But if you don't pay any attention to it, like I did in the past, it will likely not be in check quite as nicely. So being intentional about your blood sugar means prioritizing healthy whole foods and lean proteins and healthy fats and healthy carbs. And of course, it means sprinkling in loads of processed stuff or sugar stuff, whatever you like, just working them in and being fine with them, right? But at the same time, not overdoing them. Okay, then there's a couple of more reasons why intentional eating is great. It can help you to manage your weight. I know that this is a controversial topic, but I stick with myself when I say that there are people whose health and well-being would benefit from weight loss. This is just the fact for me. I'm not talking about self-worth here. I'm not saying that you're more worthy when you lose weight. This is absolutely not what I'm saying here, but I'm actually saying that there are plenty of people whose quality of life would improve if they lost some weight, and many people have done it and have done so successfully and do feel better. Somebody just DM'd me on Instagram and said, yeah, I do feel so much better now when I'm a little bit lighter and I go up the flight of stairs and I'm not out of breath. So what's bad about that? There's nothing bad about that. So we should get over it, right? Intentional eating helps people to understand what foods consist of, understand about calories, what each macronutrient does for the body, and so on. So we cannot deny that there's real value in education. No, we don't have to be a nutrition scientist or expert to eat well. But intentional eating can help us to manage our weight and feel better. And even if you are not overweight, but you simply want to change your body and lose some body fat, intentional eating can help you do that too, given that this is appropriate for you. People argue that calorie tracking and macro counting are too obsessive and mess up our relationship with food, but it's not always the case. The problem happens that when we start attaching emotions and good or bad labels to tracking. And on the other hand, if we are able to track for a week, for example, and look at our foods and calories and macros just as plain data, okay, this is what I'm consuming, it can be really valuable tool to manage our weight if it's needed and if it's appropriate. If you think that you should be smaller, you're already really small, you're already having an eating disorder, please don't track. You don't have to track unless your goal is to eat enough. Yeah, then you can track. Also, if you had an eating disorder in the past and you feel like tracking can turn into an obsession, again, please don't do it. So you have to know where you are and listen to yourself. And I didn't want to hear anything about tracking for years either. And now I found it a valuable tool. Another way how intentional eating can help you is that it can help you just feel good. We have to stop doing, getting a random diets, and we have to figure out foods that work for us and what don't work for us that well. We also have to learn about our personal preferences so we don't give up the foods that we really love, which is what many diets want us to do. And only then we can become what Dr. J. Tidok says, our own metabolic detectives, right? You have to become your own metabolic detective. So you know what works for you, what doesn't, what you like, what you don't. If you are trapped in dieting mindset and jumping from one diet to another, you cannot do it. So that's why intentional eating can actually help you. When we eat foods that work for our body at intervals that work for our body and quantities that are right for us, then we feel good. And of course, these things can change. For example, you can be eating like 2 eggs and some bacon for breakfast, and that might work for you just fine. But then maybe you up your workout intensity and you feel like it does not give you the energy for your workout. So maybe you add some more carbohydrates. So it's like fluid, it changes, but it's important that we figure out what works for us, and then we are intentional about it, right? So if I'm not intentional, then I don't pay attention to my pre-workout meals. But if I'm intentional, then I do pay attention to it. And as a result, I feel better and I recover better as well. So the last part of today's episode is how to actually start this intentional eating that I've been talking about. And here are some tips that help you get started with the basics of intentional eating. Okay, so the first thing is to roughly follow the plate method. Here's a great resource from Precision Nutrition. You can look that up yourself too. That says that most of your meals for women should consist of roughly 1 palm-sized portion of protein, 1 fist-sized portion of veggies, and 1 cupped hand portion of carbs, and the thumb-sized portion of fat. So this is just the basics, and you're gonna start from there and see how you feel. Okay, this is like a super good foundation. Maybe it does not. Maybe you feel like you need more carbs. Maybe you feel like you need more fat. You're gonna adjust from there, but this is a good starting point. After your workouts, your food should look slightly different, and this is again from Precision Nutrition. They say you should be eating half of your plate worth of veggies, half the plate protein, and this meal should be lower in fat. Not fat-free, by the way, but lower in fat, so that you can properly absorb the protein and carbs. And Precision Nutrition also recommends that the post-workout meal is the largest meal of the day. And if you are plant-based, then most of your meals should consist of half plate of veggies, a quarter plate of protein, and this remaining quarter that you have should be divided by starches and fat, so half and half. Okay, so most people get most of their needs met when they follow this simple guideline. This is the first way to start getting started with intentional eating. You don't avoid any macros the way that many diets do. You don't extremely overemphasize one of the macros. You can adjust everything. So that's the beauty of like getting to know yourself and your body. Okay, then the second tip for you would be to eat regularly. If you have no clue how often you should eat, start out by eating 3 meals and a few snacks a day. Again, we want to keep the blood sugar stable and also avoid this hunger, right? Hunger plus anger. And I hope you already know that skipping meals is not the way to your dream body, but it does come with a high price. So after eating 3 meals and 2 snacks, you are starting to understand what your body needs, and maybe you have to change it, maybe no. It can also be different during the different times in your life. For example, during the quarantine, when I spent all my days at home, I mostly worked from my computer and left my house just for walks. I realized that I really didn't care much for lunch. I ate lunch, I had like a shake or smoothie or snacks, but I didn't care for big lunch. I ate a large breakfast, then a small snack, and then a bigger dinner again. But now, as life is back to normal, I'm back at work again, then I definitely want to eat lunch again. So it can change, but it has to be, you have to figure out it for yourself. My next recommendation, if you want to get started with intentional eating, is to keep a food log for a while. Before taking this step, please listen again what I mentioned before about eating disorders. If you find this tip triggering, don't do it. Don't keep a food log. Everyone else, this can be an eye-opening experience. Again, look at your food log as data, just data. Some of the clients, for example, have figured out that the reason why they woke up hungry at night was that their dinner was either too early or it barely had any fats or carbs in it. And adding a bedtime snack changed that. So that's why keeping food log was a really good thing and helped them become more intentional with their eating. So they started having before bed snack. Another one of my clients didn't know why she was farting a lot some days. And after logging her food for a while, she realized that it happened only on days when she had a whey protein shake. So it is important if we want to be more intentional so that we maybe don't use whey protein if we don't want to fart all day long, or we don't wake up at night when we have figured out that we have to have a little snack before bed. Okay, and then my last tip on how to get started with intentional eating is more like psychological, and it is don't try to be too perfect. There's a good chance that you are a type A person who wants to do everything perfectly, but don't apply this to intentional eating. This is not another diet. This is not a set of rules. Rather, see it as a set of guidelines that help you to feel your best and be your healthiest. In the dieting world, rules are rules, and if you break them, you feel ashamed of yourself, and you maybe run an extra hour on a treadmill to kind of get rid of the guilt. But with intentional eating, there are no rules, there are guidelines, and if you follow these guidelines most of the time and don't beat yourself up for the times when you don't become obsessive, and they actually help you to live a better and healthier life. All right, so that's it for me today. I do believe that intentional eating can be very helpful for you if you don't ever want to go back to extreme dieting, but you also don't like having absolutely no structure with your eating. And if you figure out what your goals are and then you put together a game plan, you have your set of guidelines, not rules, then your eating becomes much easier and you will become much healthier. All right, this is it for me today. I do hope that you enjoyed this episode. I really appreciate your ratings on iTunes. So if you could leave me a review and a rating, 5 stars, that would be amazing. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you next time. Bye. Thanks so much for listening to the Balanced Vibes podcast. If you liked the episode, please subscribe and also leave a 5-star review on iTunes. For more about me, check out my website, urbanjane.co. Yes, that's CO and not com. And connect with me on Instagram, where my username is Kirsten Kimura. That's KERSTENKIMURA. Until next time.